friends, my name is Lynn and welcome back to my channel. I'm a flutist, performer, and music teacher located in the city of Kamloops, British Columbia, and this is my channel where we learn all things flutes. Thank you so much for joining me here today. In today's video, we're going to be going on to learning high E flat and F, so if you're interested, then just keep on watching. As always, if you have any questions throughout the video, please feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. I do my best to answer them as soon as I see them. Also, if you have any issues when it comes to practicing, feel free to check out my free practice guide, also located in the description down below. It gives you 8 really easy steps to follow to help guide your practice sessions. Alright, so let's just get right into today's video. So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be learning high E flat and F, and of course we're going to be reading from my favorite book here, the Trevor Wise Beginner's Book for the Flute Part 2, and I'm going to be on page 78 here. It's so exciting, we're on part 51 out of 55, so let's just get right into it. So I'm just going to put the fingering for high E flat and F right over here. And of course we can see that we'll just go over the fingerings first for E flat and then the F there. So let's go over those fingerings. So starting with that high E flat, it's very much like the lower E flat, but all you're going to be doing is adding that extra finger on the left hand here and your pinky. So again, if you want to try doing the harmonics, you can again finger the low E flat and go all the way up to that high E flat. But just for reference, this is what the high E flat sounds like with the correct fingering. So again, that is going to be all your fingers down, 1, 2, 3, your thumb, your pinky and your thumb in the back, and then 1, 2, 3, and your pinky on your right hand. Very nice. So that's the high E flat. And then for the high F, it's very close to your regular F. All you're going to be doing is from the regular F fingering, you're going to be lifting up your middle finger in the left hand. So that means you're going to have your first finger down, your fourth finger, and then your thumb in the back, and then your first finger on your right hand and your pinky. And this is what it sounds like. Alright, so those are the two notes. Again, if you are having issues when it comes to practicing these high notes, I would highly recommend going back to episode 49. I talk about every tip that I have for getting high notes, and they all apply here. All of the same things, so making sure that you have good breath support, using the harmonic series to help you have a better feel of how much air you need to put into the instrument to get those high notes at a really nice, beautiful sound. And then as well as making sure that you have a nice, good embouchure with no tension, all of those things. So what I'm going to be doing is we're going to have 2 warm-up exercises here out of the 4 that Mr. Y provides. So I'm just going to put up number 1 over here. So we're not going to clap and count or go through any of the starter bits. I'll just play it here for you so you have an idea of what it would sound like. And if you want to, if you're having issues when it comes to remembering all those notes, because once you get into lots of the ledger lines, it can be a little bit confusing, definitely go ahead and write those letter names in above the notes, because as you start playing them and seeing them more often, they'll just start to become more natural to you. Alright, so this is exercise number 1. 1, 2, 3. So that's what the first exercise would sound like. And of course, I would highly recommend playing that with the harmonic series as well. So for the fingering for the harmonic series, the D would be the low D, the E flat would be the low E flat, and then you would be able to play the low C there in that 3rd bar. And there's nothing for B flat, so you just have to play the normal B flat. Alright, and now we're going to go on to exercise number 2, so I'm going to put that up over here. So the first one we did E flat, so that was the primary one we're focusing on, and this one we're going to be primarily focusing on the high F. So I'm going to take it at approximately the same tempo as I did the exercise previous to this one. And again, feel free to write those in and make sure that you are paying attention to where the breaths are and where the articulation is. So in the last exercise, I just ignored the breath marks because I could play through the whole line at that speed, but make sure that you are taking really nice, relaxed, deep breaths so that you have a lot of air and enough support to be able to get those high notes out. Alright, so this is going to be exercise number 2. 1, 2, 3. Alright, very good. So again, if you want to do any of the harmonic series here, you can finger the low D, the low E flat, And then also you can finger the low F there as well. And then that should be it for the harmonic fingerings there. And what I would recommend too is if you want to even put a fermata over those half notes, so just to hold them for a little bit longer as you're getting used to playing those high notes, that's completely okay too. Really focus and make the warm-up exercises your own. Alright, now we're going to go on to the scale exercise in B flat major. So I'm just going to put that up right over here. So I'll just briefly go through the first 6 starter bits. I'm not going to explain anything, and I'm not going to clap and count this, but I will play this with the metronome, and I'll get to the tempo marking once we get to the tempo indication here. Number 1, our key signature. So of course we're in B flat major, so we have B flats and E flats throughout the whole piece. 2, we're looking at our time signature, so 4 quarter notes per measure. Number 3, our tempo indication. So I'm going to be playing at a moderate tempo. So here a quarter note is going to equal 88. So again, you can use that tempo to either go slower by changing the speed in the playback settings, or also increasing it if you want to work more on your fast technique. Number 4 is our dynamics. We don't have anything written, so of course we're going to be playing at approximately mezzo forte to forte. I would recommend, if you want to start focusing on your breath control, try playing this at a softer dynamic once you're really comfortable with, first of all, the fingerings, second of all, which notes you're playing, and then third of all, how you're sounding when you are playing at a mezzo forte forte dynamic. 5, articulation. So we do have generally just slurs over all of our 8th notes, so make sure that you are noticing when it's a group of 4 or when it's a group of 8. And then 6, our roadmap, we're just reading it from top to bottom. And of course, if you want to use the B flat special fingering, you can also do that as well. So just as a reminder for that special fingering for B flat, so instead of just having the long B flat, which is your first finger in the left hand, your thumb on the back here, first finger down, and your right pinky, you can actually just shift to the golf club here, and that's actually going to bring this key down, not this specific key, but the key that this key brings down, which is this one right over here, to get that B flat. Alright, so here we go. A quarter note's going to equal 88. 1, 2, 3. Alright, very nice. So again, when you are practicing this, making sure that you're taking really great breaths. So even if you need to take them out of time to make sure you're not feeling nervous or anxious, that is completely okay. Make sure that you give yourself the time and the mental space that you need in order to get used to playing in the higher register here. And again, it also might sound really shrill to you, so if you find that you're not enjoying your sound, take a step back from playing it and maybe go back to something at a lower octave and then come back to it again with a fresh start. It's important that you don't keep kind of beating yourself down if you're not feeling comfortable or you're feeling unhappy, and really start to kind of separate that emotion and figure out how things can improve by, you can either be working at it in small parts here, so by working on it by one note at a time, for example, or again taking a little break and then coming back to it so that you're not getting fatigued playing those high notes all the time. Alright, so now we're going to go on to our next piece here. So this is a solo piece by Schubert. So I'm going to put it up right over here. It's called Andante. So again, we'll quickly go over the first 6 starter bits and then we'll get into clapping, counting, then playing the piece. So number 1, we are going to look at our key signature here. So we have 2 accidentals, B flat, E flat. So that means that we can either be in B flat major or we can either be in its minor key, which is G minor. So of course we're going to be looking at the first and last note to see if you have any indication there. So we don't start on a B, but we do end on a B there. So there is a strong indication that we are in B flat major. We're going to make sure that we see if we can find any indications of the minor key there. So again, G minor, so B, A, G. We're going to go down 3 letter names to see. So first of all, find the minor key. And then second of all, now we're going to be looking for the raised 7th or 6th. So that's going to be F sharp or E natural. And at a quick glance, I don't see anything. We do have a D flat, but really no indication of the minor key. So I'd say we're in B flat major, which we are. Number 2, we're going to look at our time signatures. So there we see the C, so that means we're in common time, which is 4/4. Number 3, we're going to be looking at our tempo indication. So here we have Andante. So a quarter note is going to equal 66 as the final tempo. Number 4, we're going to be looking at our articulation. So here we don't have any crazy articulations, just some slurs here and there. So make sure that you are paying attention to when the slurs are there. Generally, I've noticed that there are over any of the groups of eighth notes that are in groups of 4, or there are some with 2. I just want to make note that there is an interesting articulation at the second line last bar where there's 2 third, 2 third, and I don't see that anywhere else in the piece, so just make sure that you're paying attention right there. Number 5 is our dynamics. So this one is going to be a challenging piece for playing those high notes in these softer dynamics. So we see P, which represents piano, so dolce, which is sweetly. And that whole first 2 lines, when you have the repeat, it's all going to be nice and soft and sweet. So we do have some hairpin dynamics, however, bar 3, bar 4, and then also at bar 7 and bar 8. So do give yourself some leeway there, but generally you want to have a really nice sweet tone. And then third line here, we do have a mezzo forte, so moderately loud, and then we have a crescendo written in to that fermata there at the last bar of that line 3 out of forte. And then we come right down again, subito piano on that 4th line. And then again, you have that same dynamic markings as the first 2 lines where you have the hairpins in the last 2 bars. Number 6 is our roadmap. So we do have some repeats here. So we have, if you take a look at the beginning there, we have the first 2 dots right beside the time signature, and then we have the end bracket of that in the last bar of the 2nd line, and then we have a repeat starting at the 3rd line, and then the end of that repeat's going to be the end of the 4th line there. So essentially you're going to repeat the first 2 lines and then the second 2 lines together, and that's it. Alright, I don't think we're going to do the clapping count with this one. If you are feeling uncomfortable, we'll definitely go in with a metronome at a tempo, even if it's not 66, you can start it slower. Just make sure that you're clapping and counting this as you would any other piece. I'm just not going to do it because it is relatively straightforward and you should be able to figure it out by this point in your journey here. So again, if you are having any issues with that, you can always write in the numbers with the counting and then go from there. Alright, so again, this is going to be a quarter note equals 66. And of course, before we start, one last thing, I just want to make sure that you are writing in any of those letter names for any of those high notes if you are still not used to reading them that high, especially the F that comes up a few times, and then also making sure that you're paying attention to accidentals when you have them. So in the first line, 4th bar, we have a B natural there, and then it comes back to B flat, and then as I mentioned earlier, we do have that D flat in the 4th line, 1st bar. So make sure that you are paying attention to those accidentals there. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Alright, very nice. So A few notes here just to end off this piece. So do make sure that you are paying attention to where we do have fermatas. So on the third line, last bar there, we do have a fermata over the D. And then in the last line there, last bar, we do have a rallentando with a trill. What I did there is I came from the note just above, so I came from the B flat down to the A, but there's no note there for you to do that. So if you don't want to do that, it's totally okay. You can just go from G trill A up to B flat, which is, by the way, fingering the A, and you're just lifting up the middle finger here. That is the correct trill. So again, if you wanted to do it just as it's written there, would be the way to play it. So, and then we also have a rallentando, of course, which is to slow down gradually right at the end. All right, now we're going to go on to our last piece today, and it's going to be a duet. So we're going to be quickly going through the starter bits, and then we'll do the clapping count, and then we will play it on the flute for both parts with a complete duo at the end. So I'm going to put it up right over here. So this is Air by J. Clinton on page 79. So first 6 starter bits. Number 1, our key signature here. So we don't have any accental, so that means you can be in C major or A minor. Looking at the first note and the last note, the first note, the second part starts on a C, and at the end, both parts end on a C. So I would say we're in C major, which we are. 2 is our time signature. So here we're in compound time. We're in 6/8 time. So again, 6/8 is 6 being 6 beats per measure, and 8 telling us that those beats are eighth notes. So you have 6 eighth notes per measure. Number 3, we are looking at our tempo indication. So here we're playing in moderato. So each eighth note is going to equal 1/12 as the final tempo. Number 4, we're going to be looking at our articulation. So here I do notice that we do have some varying articulation. So just make sure that you are paying attention to the slurs here. Primarily, the slurs are now, instead of being over all groups of 3, they're going to be groups of 2. So I'm saying 2 slurred, 1 tongue, 2 slurred, 1 tongue. That seems to come up a lot when you're playing groups of 3 eighth notes. So just make sure that you are being very consistent with that. It can be easy to kind of go back. And there are parts where we are playing 3 slurs. So I'm looking at the second line, third bar in the first part. So we do have that. So really making sure that you're paying attention to where that articulation is. And when we do have other things like staccato, so looking at the first part, third line, second bar, so that, and that comes up again in 2 bars later. And then we also have these little accents here. So those are breath marks. So again, you're going to add an extra little ha to the beginning of those notes to kind of give it a little bit more emphasis compared to the notes around it. And otherwise, I think that's it for the articulation. Number 5, we're going to be looking at our dynamics. So here we started a mezzo forte, then we have 2 hairpins at the end of that line. And then, so that means you can either go up to like a forte or double forte, and then come back down again to whatever dynamic marking you want, maybe mezzo piano or back to mezzo forte. And second line, we do have a crescendo there in the second bar, where we're playing nice and loud all the way to a decrescendo in the third bar, or sorry, for the fourth bar. And then we come down to piano, that last bar there, so bar 5 of line 2. And we have some more hairpin crescendos there in the third line. And then we're going to have a nice crescendo to a forte in that third line, third bar. Play forte all the way through. We have D crescendo to mezzo forte. And then we have a crescendo written in the last bar of the third line there. And we have it all the way up until we have the ritardando there. I would say we're going to all the way up to that fermata there in the fourth line, last bar. And then we come back down to mezzo forte, and then we have another crescendo there in the last line, going through the first, second, and to the third bar there, where we pretty much end on a nice forte, and then we have a decrescendo on that last note there on the last bar. And then 6, we're going to look at our roadmap, and we don't see any repeats or anything here. So we're just going to be reading it from top to the bottom. Just make sure that we are paying attention to where we have little indicators of tempo marking. So here, looking at the fourth line, we have written. So ritenuto is hold back. So rather than slowing down gradually, you're just going to hold back on the tempo. And then you're going to go back to a tempo at the last 2 eighth notes of that bar there. And then we do have a rallentando, and that's going to be at the end of the piece there, right before the fermata. So upon review of the tempo here with the eighth notes, I've decided not to clap and count because it is at a tempo that I think is slow enough to count. Again, if you are having issues with the rhythm here, definitely go ahead and clap and count this for yourself, and it'll help to make things a little bit easier. But I'm just going to play it on the flute here, so this is going to be part 1. Again, this is going to be an eighth note equals 112. 1, 2, 3. Alright, so that one is really nice. I really like how it has this nice kind of like waltzy feel to it. It has a nice walking, like almost like you're kind of swaying back and forth side to side. So again, I'm really paying attention to the dynamics here. That's going to be really important to really bring the character of the piece out. Alright, now we're going to do the same thing but part 2. 1, 2, 3. So what I did there, I wasn't really able to do the ritenuto there so much. It's a little bit difficult to line it up with both parts. But if you're to perform this with someone else, really make sure that you are paying attention to that. If you want to play along, there will be a final duet at the end where you can play either one of those parts there. Alright, so that's going to be it for today's video. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. I do my best to answer them as soon as I see them, and also to check out my free practice guide if you have issues with practicing. If you like this video, please be sure to press the like button and also to subscribe for more videos just like this. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me here today, and as always, happy fluting!